I will not sit up in the nosebleeds. I will not stop until they know me. I want you all to listen closely before I motherfucking proceed. Yeah, when you're grinding on the low key and they're complacent with their low needs.
It is Sunday night, so you know what that means. It is time for another Last Week in Wrestling podcast. Of course, you see my boy, Joey Pan, hanging out, bopping out, enjoying that intro and enjoying himself. And that means it is time to do another amazing Last Week in Wrestling podcast. Of course, I am your host, Dylan, right here of the actual show itself. And I have a very special and international guest of guests, my guy, Joe Panther the Third. How are you doing, buddy? What's going on? Welcome to the pod.
I'm good, and I just want to do like I do in every podcast since day one. Hello there, wrestling fans. To the Last Week in Wrestling podcast. I am the guest, Joe Panther Third, and man, bopping and dropping, man, I'm doing great. I'm so glad to be on here. Thank you so much for bringing me on, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. You've been a very, very important part of this podcast, ending the year strong. So I'm happy that I got you on. I'm so happy to be a part of your friend group and everybody over there on Instagram. And of course, everybody that's watching right now, please go down in that description and hit up Joey P right now on Spotify, on Instagram, on YouTube, because this international legend right here has so much great content and so many great moments on his show each and every time he has on a legend. Anywhere he goes, he brings multiple smiles on multiple people's faces. And of course, those dancing moves, if you don't ever want to see some bad dancing, you go ahead and you go see my man Joey P. But Joe, let's get right into it, man. Tell the people who you are, what you do, what you've been doing, and anything kind of exciting that might be happening coming up.
I am Joe Panther the third generation. I'm the host of the Dudes at Ringside podcast, the Twins at Ringside podcast with my lovely, sassy sister, Angela. I also do a podcast called The Ghost Head Talk. Sorry, that's my computer. Damn people. People are always talking to me. The Ghost Head Nerd Talk podcast with my buddy Ghost Head fellow Rain. I do backstage mailer with Sabrina. I have a lot of good episodes coming up before the year is over. This month is it's just the thing now that this podcast is 3 years old.
Wow.
I'm just so over the moon that I'm doing this, so much stuff that I've done through this past year that I've gone through and I've been doing,
Yeah. Yeah, you've been making some crazy content for sure. I know you more on the wrestling side of things, and I know you're a big fan of independent wrestling. You strive to really bring to the forefront of how important independent wrestling is. And as a fan of the independent scene, or a new fan really of the independent scene, I figured you were the best guest to talk about and probably get a lot of my questions about independent wrestling answered by yourself. But of course, we're going to get to all that a little bit later on, but let's start with something that I feel that is near and dear to not only your heart, but to the wrestling world itself. And it is your absolutely legendary grandfather himself, Jose. Let us talk about how he has definitely shaped the Vince McMahon company that we know, of course, as the WWE. Once upon a day, it was called the WWF, and so many other names prior to that. So why don't you kind of run us through some of that knowledge that, your grandfather taught your father, that then taught you, about how wrestling can really shape as an art form and be such a very crowd gathering type of place to just enjoy awesome entertainment.
Like when I was a little boy, I uncle brought me to my very first show in Madison Square Garden, and I sat there as the lights turned off, and I told my uncle, "What's going on?" He's like, "Oh." And Howard Finkel comes out and welcomes. He did the Howard Finkel like he does he used to do every time he'd come in the arena. He grabbed the microphone, the cool mustache like the thing had. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Madison Square Garden. And I'm like, wow, his voice is so cool. And I was at my first show and I was just taking it all in. I went home, and a few days later, my dad sat me down and showed me a picture of my dad's father. I was like, Randy, this was your grandfather. He wrestled in the WWF. And I was like what I was just at in the garden? Like in the wrestling show? Yes. And that day built it built a small love of wrestling. And over the years, I started to love the way that wrestling was put together and the stories from my dad about him hanging out with Haystacks Calhoun, Killer Kowalski, Classy Freddie Blassie, and the stories that my dad told me made me respect wrestling more than anybody else. Because as a kid, when you have a grandfather that was a pro wrestler, what do you think that person will do to other people when they say, "Oh, I like Andre. I don't know the words of that. I like Hogan. I like Ultimate Warrior. I like the Road Warriors." And I go, I never met him, but I love my grandfather. My grandfather was a wrestler. Was your grandfather a wrestler? And they're all like, I like Hogan. I like, and I'm just like, nobody answered my question. Why is everybody ignoring that damn question? Like, it just made me have a different level of fandom than anybody else. And it's just something that I never met him. I never met my father. But as my grandmother once said, I lost her a few months, like a little bit ago. She said that she always thought that I took the spirit. I have his spirit in me. That's why I love pro wrestling so much. I have that old cloth of pro wrestling in my arms. And everybody's like, you should like these people. You should like these people. I love wrestling as a whole. People think I hate AEW. Wrestling is a blanket to me. I'm a person with a disability. It's a safety blanket. I don't hate it. I'm just not a fan of what they're showing you. You know what I mean? It's not my monkey's not my problem, as they would say. But I'll watch it from afar and not slip them off. I go, you're not doing that right. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think even from your father's grandfather's generation of how it was not just about entertainment being that solace that everybody escaped to. It was the art form of technical wrestling and ability to sell these moves on a grander scale, even if the masses at that period weren't as massive as they are now. I mean, currently now in the 2020s of professional wrestling, they're 60,000, 77,000 at Wembley Stadium, and so many more masses of arenas and sizes have quadrupled since that heyday of when this product of art has started and now has shifted into this wider and grander scale that's become a little bit more, I guess the word you could say is maybe very inclusive to a very niche audience, but that has, even though it's a niche audience, it's still a very open and welcoming audience of other cultures and other traditions. Because besides the basics and fundamentals of pro wrestling and what it stood upon, it has gravitated to this understanding of other traditions and styles that are that are really across other regions of this beautiful planet. You know, we now have luchador style wrestling, and we had the lucha underground scene, and we have so many beautiful independent wrestling promotions that are just as open and welcoming. And even this whole new modern era of indie wrestling has shaped and shaped really a lot of our newer generation eyes who are coming into this business. So in a way, you know, your grandfather's legacy has started this mass domino effect that's still being replicated in some aspects today. But I think, like you said, it's such a safety blanket. I'm going to use your words for a sec, but it is that safety blanket for a lot of us fans. Because sometimes if you're a content creator like ourselves, yes, it's a business. Yes, we got to dig deep and try to find those things that are trending to be that hot noise. But there's also that other community that's very, no, like, have you seen that guy? Have you seen that tag team? Did you just watch this moment that way that I watched it? Because if you didn't see it this way, now maybe going back on it, you can with a brand new set of eyes. And I think that's what's so impressive about this business, that we hold true to ourselves and stuff. So in a way, we have to thank people like your grandfather for being that staple for professional wrestling and really staying true.
In the lucha world. Too.
Yeah, and to the art form that it truly is, and still being that mainstream leader and flag holder of where these roots have been established. So I think that's really cool that your genes, your actual blood comes from inside the ring than the rest of us that are outside the ring, behind the barricade, that are just on the social medias bitching away about how, oh, we don't like this and I don't like this, or I want this or I want that. So it's a very different set of eyes that you get to see through. And in a way, it's very cool. You know, you have to take pride in that. It's a very cool thing now that you get to take pride in. And, you know, from that, we'll kind of go on about your grandfather for a little bit longer. You know, I bet you, you know, he had some amazing moments. Why don't you talk about some of those really great moments that your father shared with you with matches like, you know, with Calhoun and other people that he wrestled upon or even just worked with in the locker room?
My grandfather's best friend was Haystacks Calhoun fans, and like he used to hang out with him. He used to go do things with him. And the man was a light guy. He was one of the big boys. One of the if they show the height meter, he was up there. He's one of the big. He was a thick boy. Like he was add the sound effect from that movie. He was a big boy. Yeah, see, he was a big guy. So, like, he would literally have to sit in the back of my uncle's hatchback and travel around with him to go to shows. Cool. And it was, like, insane to think that back in those days, a big man like that, like the big guys like Andre, they really couldn't travel that well. No. Like, you would have to, like, beg the pilot, please let him on. We'll give you an extra $100 to let him travel with you guys. He'd be driving, and my dad would tell me they would have to drive to like somewhere like Maryland, and here's Haystacks Calhoun in the back of a pickup truck. And like nowadays, you get a freaking ticket if the person's in the back of a truck trying to go over a bridge.
Yeah, really.
Like, yeah. Poor Haystacks is under a blanket in a fucking rainstorm in the middle of the highway going to Maryland, because you remember how there was territories back in those days? He was in the territory from New York to Washington to Baltimore.
Like right. That was seniors territory that he started with. Exactly. Yeah. Now let me ask you this. You know, I know unfortunately you were never able to meet the man, but you know him in a way than any of us will because of the stories you've heard of him. From all of that, in that territory that he wrestled in, was there any territory specifically that he enjoyed more than others? Was there a state in particular or anything that you might know of? Or
my dad used to say a lot of the New York because that was home for him.
Listen, New York's the best.
Like Peter Griffin, where you going? Home. Like my dad, because there he was a city boy. He lived in New York City, so it was like Queens. Like the Queens, Brooklyn area. It was awesome. Like the street that he was from was Knickerbocker Avenue in New York City.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was it. That was their street. That's where they lived, on Knickerbocker Avenue in New York City.
Wow.
And the
That's so
apartment
crazy.
building, yeah,
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
that was that apartment building is still there. So if you ever go by Knickerbocker Avenue, that's where that's where Grandpa Panther and my dad and his twin brother and my grandmother, they owned an apartment building. A
That's
big.
so crazy.
And
That's
the other thing was, that other gave me more of an the reason why I'm part of the blanket. My aunt Tata or someone that's in my family, she used to help when the wrestlers go backstage, and there's that old black lady that worked for WWE that would sew their gear and fix it for them.
Mhm.
That is what my aunt used to do for the wrestlers.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
she did a lot more of the hands-on of, like, the creative of the design sets and
Yes. Yes.
pieces of fabric that they would wear and stuff like that. That's really cool. That's a
Yeah.
really cool thing. Now, do you have any of his old, like, ring attire at the house or anything? Is that still maybe somewhere in grandma's house or
Grandma's grandma's gone because she died. My uncle Frankie, my uncle, he knows that I'm such a diehard fan. I've been trying to like ease it away from him, but he has it in a way that brings tears to my eyes when I see it. He
Mm.
has his mask in a long Ziploc bag,
Oh, wow.
and I get tears in my eyes, and I have to walk away. I'm like,
Yeah.
you get that heavy breathing, when you're about to cry. And the
Yeah.
mask is slowly like, because it's leather. It's a leather
Right.
mask. So it's starting to like decay. And I'm like, it could be on my wall all good and not safe, not being destroyed by the plastic bag. So,
Yeah. Well, hopefully one day we get to see that in your backdrop
oh
of your studio and stuff.
yeah.
So,
And this
but
studio is called the Jose Quinones Memorial Studios. So
okay. Yeah,
yeah.
in honor of your great grandfather. That's awesome.
And then with me, I found out during the pandemic, I have
Mhm.
two other family members that were in pro wrestling.
Oh, let's talk about them. Who are they? What
I
kind of
had
they
I
do?
I'm sorry. I had found out that I have Pete Sanchez,
Hmm.
which wrestled till I want to say the late 90s.
Okay.
And pretty much almost every single wrestler that was in the golden era,
Okay.
he wrestled in. Pretty much almost every Hall of Famer that's gone into the Hall of Fame, he's scrapped, and his fingerprints have been on them. From the Big Boss Mans, the Rowdy Roddy Pipers, Jake the
Wow.
Snake Roberts, and the one that gave me chills, and I was like, wow, this is really history. He was the first person to ever face Ric Flair in Madison Square Garden.
Wow. Now that's really, really cool.
Don't know who
That
who won the match, but he faced Rick in the first match he ever did in the Garden.
Wow, that's really cool. So then MSG really has a very sentimental value to you because of how much your family has stepped foot and made such tremendous memories in professional wrestling history. And that's a really really cool thing to say because I'm just a fan. As myself being a lot younger and whatnot, I've just been a fan of this business for X amount of years. My introduction was the ruthless aggression era when Cena kind of first became on TV and Orton and Batista. Before he was called Batista, he was called Leviathan and everything. And they were still working somewhat at OVW and everything. So it's been a very different change of pace for myself because as a fan who started in that era, that's one of those other big peak eras in professional wrestling. I went back to watch the Attitude Era and go back to the NWA era where Dusty Rhodes was his, iconic self before going into the ECW world for a little bit to make some money and everything. And then, of course, I continued on from that ruthless aggression era into the 2010s and stuff. So, I found professional wrestling like yourself, that safety net, that blanket of security to really fall back on after just being in school. What kid never really wanted to be in school? They'd rather be home playing with their friends or now on video game consoles and Xbox and a PlayStation themselves all the way to the top and stuff. So it's very interesting how this business has changed. And I kind of want to talk to you about that a little bit because, you know, like you said, you have multiple members of your family who have been a part of this wrestling industry, this ever growing business itself. How would you say now, not so much maybe the 2020s, because I know it's evolved since maybe 2010s, 2015s, but when you started watching that Attitude Era after the late 80s into the early 90s and then 2000s, how would you say it shifted? Would you say that it shifted still with your grandfather's legacy as its basic legs, or would you say that they kind of upgraded and evolved themselves into this new style that became more of a worldwide entertainment source of professional wrestling?
I think pro wrestling has evolved, like changed its look like a snake, because they now depend on the fans to keep them afloat with different names that they don't really like. The John Cenas, the Edges, the Hardy Boys came into being that crazy team that we weren't really ready for the hardcore stuff, but ECW was there and people were watching it. It was separate. Like with WWE's fans, they started getting like crazy with the Attitude Era stuff with the puppies and all this other stuff. And ECW fans, everybody started getting their own corners because WCW was still there. The hardcore wrestler fans, so everybody had their own corners of the world at that moment. So like my grandfather's wrestling kind of slowly backed up because a lot of wrestling started changing because they no longer had the territories that everybody knew about. And it started saying open market, so anybody can go anywhere they wanted to go, more than where they think they should have gone, you know? So, yeah, when it comes to like wrestling, everybody had their own side of the planet, like part of the country. So now, pretty much, they broke the not the fourth wall. They broke the territories, and everybody could travel wherever they want. Except for sad, we never got a chance to see a Monday Nitro in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, we never did.
Imagine that. Imagine how cool that would have been if the Garden would have hosted Raw, like SmackDown. I mean Nitro. Or I don't think Thunder would have been able to come because Thunder wasn't that big. It was kind of like, yeah.
It tried its hardest. It tried its hardest to be big.
It was the little brother that said, "I beat you in a video game," and then you look, and then he doesn't see the controller was never plugged in at all. It's like
I have many of those memories. Like memories.
I beat you in the match, and the guy's like, "You're gonna tell him?" No. poor Thunder. God damn.
Thunder.
Poor Thunder. R.I.P. Thunder.
R.I.P. Thunder. May you rest in peace, buddy. But let's continue on with this topic because I'm really enjoying it. I would say my next one would be for you. When did you start watching the product itself? What was that era that you started watching the product, and not just as much as a fan, but more as a person of interest in the business aspect of it all, and pulling that fandom a little bit to the side and watching it from like a different angle, kind of like how now you've become a podcaster in this wrestling community?
I started watching when I was about like 10 or 11 years old.
Okay.
That's like my dad told me when I was like 9 about being my grandfather stuff. And then I started watching in a different, like, it felt like my body was always twisted to the side watching, like seeing like the guys move and how they threw each other, and Hogan always did this stuff. And I was just like so intrigued on how the good guy used to always get over and the bad guy. But back in those days where my grandfather wrestled, the heel never got their flowers. The heel was always the jobber. Because, nowadays we have the jobbers that come in. Sorry, I love you indie people, but you guys, as what Al Snow says on The Wrestler, he might drop that shit. Sorry, excuse my friend.
No. You could curse on this. It's okay.
He fucking said it and set a pipe bomb off to anybody that's watched that show. If whoever's in the chat, please tell me I'm true. I'm telling the truth, because the indie wrestlers that go on dark are the punching bags of the wrestling world. I love all my indie buddies that come on Dudes at Ringside and Twinside, Ringside, and Backstage Melee. It's like Star Wars. I'm going on AEW Dark. It's a trap. It's a trap. It's a trap. It's a trap. You're getting trapped to have all these big names on AEW just totally demolish you.
Yeah.
But watching Saturday night main events and watching like the starts of SmackDown and Raw and just watching it and like learning to love what I see and like. And then there was WCW, so I sometimes watch WCW, but I watched a lot of Raw and SmackDown, and I also watched a lot of to think what I could do when I get a little older. I was watching a lot of Mean Gene Okerlund, Mean Gene Okerlund, and listening to the way Gorilla Monsoon would say his words and enunciate and talking to the camera, and if he's at commentary, but if Mean Gene was talking with a wrestler, he would look into the camera. And then he would look at his opponent, his person he was interviewing, and really take in everything he was saying. Like,
yeah, I think that's a very now a lot of us as content creators are just I sometimes like to call ourselves complainers of the internet. You know, there's so many of us now that there's such a big space for so much want, and need that it's not so much of that to what you just said. That looking of excitement and looking of want from how you could really work with somebody side by side. You know, like Mean Gene, I think, to be honest, is probably one of the best commentators, if not wrestling reporters, that has ever really come and gone in this professional wrestling world. You know, there's many others that followed suit. You know, you got your Michael Coles of the world and Tony Schiavone's, and then, of course, I just saw him today, Ventura, that was around for a little bit, and you know Jerry Lawler, JR, of course, and you know more and more. But now at that time frame, I'm going to ask you this: what was it for you? What was that moment for you that you said, maybe I need to voice my opinion on how I'm looking at this business from my angle to see if others out there are also watching it from the same angle? Was there a period, an era for you where you were like, okay, now it's time? Or were you always having that itch and just one day you finally decided to just scratch it and go, okay, let me get behind the mic for a moment?
Well, I did in my school I went to, as I said, I went to a school. I'm a person with a disability. So I went to a school program that had a radio station, and they said,
wow,
do you want to do radio? And I was like, okay, I'll do radio. And I would do a radio show that was music, and then I started doing the recaps of Raws and SmackDowns.
Okay.
You know, talk about Raw, what I thought about it, if I liked it, didn't like it. I don't think I have any of those tapes still, but I was doing that, and then I have been in Pennsylvania now. I live in the Poconos, so I started doing. We'll wait till you start talking about my channel. But like, I just did the radio show, and I thought, this is fun, and I'm enjoying talking to an audience. I don't know how many people are actually listening to my shows, but like, it was fun to be on a microphone or actual radio microphone and talking into it and just talking into air. I'm looking at like a old, here we go. This is going to show how it was an old equipment. So they had a tape player. Yeet. Yeah.
Yeet. What's going on, Santos? How are you, buddy?
What up, Santos? Welcome to the fold. Welcome to my life. Oh God. Welcome to my life. Oh,
there
God.
We go. Right.
Feels like the episode of Raw when oh God, from Attitude Era, when Foley does this is your life to The Rock.
Oh yes, that's a great moment. That's a really
that feels like me right now. I'm like, you're the Foley and I'm The Rock. I'm like, you bring out my fifth straight, and this is The Rock's fifth straight girlfriend. You're a hoe, and you'll still always be a hoe. Oh God. But yeah, I knew when I set foot on that microphone that day, I was like, I could feel like I could do anything. I could break through
Mm.
glass. I would probably, to my dumb luck, I'd fall like Chris Farley. But I knew that this is sort of like my sword. I could do
Okay.
something with this, but I didn't know what. I didn't know yet what yet. But get to your next thing, and if it's about the channel, I'll get to that
Yeah,
point.
we're slowly working our way to that
Okay.
channel and everything, for sure. Because I do would like to know how it all kind of came together for you. But going from what you just said, when you first got onto that microphone itself, you didn't really know the direction or where exactly you were going to go. Was there a moment during a Raw recap or a SmackDown recap where you started to feel like, okay, maybe if I take this part of the show and make its own show from it, maybe this is the way I need to now voice my opinion to maybe at the time was a mass audience to most of us, but really to a niche community that it really is.
Yeah, like I think for me, it was after I think one of the matches with ugh, the name kind of gives me the skivats talking about it. Chris Benoit
Mm,
versus one of the matches with Chris Benoit versus Angle.
okay.
One of those matches, I can't remember which one it was, but I went on and I was talking about how crazy this rivalry is starting to build up to be like the eagle versus the Wolverine, and how like intense it was getting between those two, and it could get somewhere. I didn't know where it was going, but when it went up, that fireball is in the ceiling. We could see the fires from Philadelphia and see it from Ontario. Like
Oh wow.
they were. I was like, something's coming from this rivalry, but my friends didn't believe me. But I said, I know that this rivalry could have been crazier than it was. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like it could have been
Yeah.
crazier. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know Benoit's name unfortunately now holds a lot of negative weight in the wrestling world because of the actions that he fortunately committed. But at one point, Benoit was one of those big wrecking ball of real wrestling capability and tenacity. There's stories from Jericho and, Angle himself saying that sometimes wrestling Benoit was one of the hardest matches that you're going to have to undergo. Triple H and even Shawn Michaels have said it as well that, Benoit's ability to just continue going no matter the lengths and the cost that it will bring to him, it was about that. The sport was more important than the art that he was actually creating on that squared canvas. And for a lot of the matches that he has done in his past and his lineage, even stuff in Canada, he really was one of those pioneers to bring that more of a brutality to that wrestling art that many of us only really saw in a hardcore sense with people like Foley or Terry Funk and people like Al Snow, even Abdullah the Butcher, if you really want to go back, and then of course we had our offspring of Tommy Dreamer, the Sandman, the Dudley Brothers, Hardy Boys. Excuse me. So, I feel like that evolution definitely tried to be ever so flourishing in multiple aspects. But we'll continue on about how you thought the style. Let's go back to that now, going back inside the ring for a second. Let's go to the style. What was your particular style of wrestling from all the ones that you've now have seen throughout your very long career as a fan of this business? Was there a particular genre, I like to call them, of style of wrestling that you preferred to watch over and like maybe more storytelling based with the cinematography of that brutality? Or did you like the hard hitting, just nonstop go, 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 go movement of wrestling itself? Or did you feel like that ballerina esque type of style was more your play of fun attraction. So what kind of style did you prefer to watch when you were watching these Raws and SmackDown as you got older?
I felt that like with my grandfather being like a grappler, I
Hmm.
always felt like the grapples of Benoit and Kurt Angle. And when I was younger, I used to watch a lot of the Hogans because he was like storyline oriented, the Ultimate Warrior, the Macho Mans. But the guy that used to catch my eye a lot when I was younger, because he was very his character outfits are always so spot, and his vests are always so cool. The Texas Tornado, Terry Von
Oh
Erich, he never
wow.
got his
Okay.
flowers. He never got his flowers because he was always he moved way he moved around. He came in the ring, that boom, 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 the guitar music when he came out to the ring. He didn't have that long robe like Flair's. His robe went up to his knees, and he had the streamers and stuff like that on his boots. And
Hmm.
his finishing move that he never got flowers for either, doing the claw. And then he did that
Okay.
tornado punch. I used to love the claw because it was a submission hold that you like. How do you explain someone getting? How do you get knocked out today? I got knocked out by a claw. Like, how'd you
That's
lose? I
funny.
got knocked out by somebody grabbing my face, pulley claw like a hawk, like knocking me out.
That's funny. So yeah, I mean, I would say definitely that bombastic era of costumes was very popular in
Mm.
the 80s more than the 90s. You know, Flair, of course, like you said, with the robe, the tornado with his robe and stuff like that. Now, was there ever a moment where you thought that the costumes overshadowed the character's in-ring ability?
Mm.
Or was there ever a moment that you would say that maybe the lack of costume didn't actually showcase the character and what they were trying to do?
It's kind of weird. The wrestler, that another person, really didn't get his flowers because they tossed him into a stable, and the stable got big. But the Warlord, like his
Okay.
outfit for beginning was just a black tights like Stone Cold's, and then they eventually gave him the lightning bolts on his gear, and they gave him the Warlord chest plate, and then they had him, the powers of pain. He formed with
Correct.
the Barbarian. And they like if WWF was really thinking, they could have made the Powers of Pain one of those teams the wrestling world would have feared. Like the Powers, like Warlord and the Barbarian, two of the most
Mm.
devastating, could have been the most dominating tag team in WWF. But like
Yeah.
they were still in that era of the Demolition, the Legion of Doom, another team that really didn't get their flowers and they won the belts, but it didn't count because the rope fell, was the Rockers.
Oh, okay.
The
Yes.
Rockers, like, you know what I mean, dude? They're like they had that it factor everywhere they went in the indie scene. Everybody knew who the Rockers were. They didn't have to have that. I love the theme song because everybody, if you play that drum and you're a wrestling fan, it's like you hear that guitar, that drum beat, and then the ding, 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 the guitar. You either think the
Mhm.
Ultimate Warrior is coming out, or Marty Jannetty is going to come running out first, and then Sean's going to come running behind him. You know what I
Right.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I actually just watched a Rockers match because I'm very good friends and they're very dear friends of mine, really, from No Bones About Wrestling, Asa and Kay Fabulous. They do watch alongs of retro style Survivor Series. We did. We're now doing Starcade as well right now.
Ooh.
Currently, we did a couple of the Halloween Havocs.
Do you do
And
it on this? The
no,
watch.
no, no, no. No bones about wrestling. They do watch alongs where we all tune in. We watch the show via Peacock on the Peacock channel,
Oh,
and we
okay.
all have everybody that's watching along with us watch it along with us, and then we give our Ace is very knowledgeable in that like tidbit of historical facts of like certain things that are happening and everything like that. Like I just my first time ever got introduced to the gobbledygooker.
Oh God.
Yeah. So I was like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, who is this? And he was like, no. Just wait till the egg hatches. Just wait till the egg hatches. It's worth it. Trust me. When I watched this as a kid, it was so worth it. And I was like, okay, all right. And then I'm like, it's a fucking turkey. I mean, are you out of your mind? Like this is what's in there this whole entire time. And you see me and Gene sitting there going like, oh, I think he's about to hatch. He's about to come out now, I guess. All right, I guess it's time. And it's just like seeing all of that. It was just so much fun. It was so much fun, and of course, working with them is always an absolute pleasure. But yeah, no, we watched I believe it was a Survivor Series that the Rockers, Moni Jannetty and Shawn Michaels were a part of. That I got to be introduced to the Rockers because I knew of them prior, and I knew about the whole barbershop scene that became Shawn Michaels' debut separation from the Rockers.
So to my life.
Yeah. But yeah, no, like that separation, and then of course now, him turning into be one of the biggest, most legendary icons. Yeah, exactly. Just like yourself, internationally known. Heartbreak Kid and everything. But let's kind of go back to the content creation portion of what you've been doing. So now you've kind of started off doing this radio stuff, and you've been figuring out certain ways to maybe make this your own, but you're still at that point where you're not 100% sure of what this really is that you're playing with. So what was it then that you decided, okay, you know what? Let me go home and try to figure out a plan, a strategy to start making content around this at the time that, the internet wasn't maybe as big as it is now, and it's not all what we're doing now on StreamYard and stuff like that. Talk to me about how you started making content and that journey into content creation as a wrestling fan.
All right, let's go into this. I've been now in PA for 16 years, and I worked at Walmart, and me and my buddies, Jay Beans on the scene, James Axel, and Trevor, we all were talking in the break room, and we said, we want to do something in wrestling that people will not forget. So we went, and we were talking, and we had a pad and paper, and we were talking. Let's start a pre and post show called Wrestle Talk, and like we did pre's before Raws, pre before SmackDowns, and pre and post before and after pay-per-views. So we would sit and just talk about what we thought was going to happen, and then after the show, we would give our side of what we thought was going to happen. I started the YouTube channel. It was originally called the Joe the Greeter Show, which I had Wrestle Talk, and we talked about Raws and SmackDowns, and we would just did our own characters. I was Joe the Greeter. My buddies did all their own things, had their own characters and intros, even though flag. It lasted for a while, and then one of the guys just wanted to make it all about characters, and I was like, kind of don't want to do that. So I stopped doing YouTube altogether because I got bored of the characters and having to get all the guys to agree on dates, and if it would work for one guy, if that guy wasn't there, it would be weird. The ship was kind of tipping a little bit. So we decided to separate, and I got bored of the channel. I don't know why I deleted it. I could have been now what I have as the Joe the Panther variety show, but I got rid of the channel, and I got bored for a while, and I was like, oh, now what? And I had a whole bunch of stuff on there. It was just it was a fun ride with Wrestle Talk for a while with my buddies, and we were a fun crew of random dudes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's awesome. So then talk to me about now how you've morphed into this Dudes of Ringside, now the Joe Panther variety show, where now you're having a lot more in the indie scene. We're gonna kind of talk about that now, about your introduction into the indie scene itself. What was the first indie show you went to where you said, you know what, the indie scene isn't getting all of that love and tender and care that it deserves, because this too is a part of this beautiful community that I'm a part of, but it's not getting its flowers the way it should. What was that show for you, or that venue for you, that you decided, okay, let me start making my new footprint here and try to get a new spotlight on the independent scene?
The show and the venue They don't do shows there anymore. It's the Deer Park Recreational Center in Deer Park, Long Island. The show was the Psycho Circus, and the promotion was the one and only the New York Wrestling Connection.
Wow.
The Psycho Circus was my very first independent wrestling show that I ever attended. And man, I chose the best show out of every show that you could ever go to. Because fans, if you're not familiar with the Psycho Circus, are you familiar with the Psycho Circus?
I am not. I am familiar with Deer Park since I do live on Long Island. I'm more familiar with Creative Pro wrestling and stuff, but no, I've not. So this is going to be a very educational background of the Psycho Circus right now. So definitely very excited to hear all about it.
The Psycho Circus is like the NYWC's version of the Survivor Series.
Okay.
And they pretty much have 3-man versus 3-man, 4 versus 4, I think. And one at a time, everybody will come out. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, and it's not just a normal brawl. Like, it is kind of like war games without a cage. Weapons, tacks, yes.
Damn.
Weapons, fire, barbed wire, thumbtacks, Legos.
Ooh.
Oh, you name it, they bring it in. Like,
okay.
And one of the big guys that was in the match for my first show was Mikey Whipwreck.
Really? Okay.
Yes, he was in the match. And that match, there was one spot that I'll never forget, that they brought a table in the ring and the table was too heavy. So they lifted it in. They didn't know why. So the guy got on the ladder to do the spot and he did the Matt Hardy, the Whisper in the Wind move, and the guy went through the table. The table didn't break. It just went. So we were all like, oh, and the wrestler's wife was pregnant, sitting in the window like this.
Yeah.
Staring at him like, you son of a bitch. The guy had a bruise from up here down to his ankle.
Jesus.
Yes, aka.
Oh my God. Holy shit. Yeah. Oh, we were chanting that at House of Glory. I'm gonna tell you a story to combat that one in a little bit. But
yeah.
So now, as you're at this show and watching, I mean, an absolute brawl for all at this point.
Yeah.
It's what it seems like.
Yeah.
What made you stick around and go, all right, now I need to talk to somebody here and pick their brain about why they decided to almost eliminate themselves on this planet and all of this crazy debacle that is professional wrestling?
I just went up to the wrestlers and they talk to you. They come up to you, come up to them, you talk to them. I got a chance to meet Matt Cardona and what's his tag team, well, former tag, his buddy that does the podcast with him,
Hawkins.
What's that?
Chris Hawkins?
Yeah, we sat and talked for like 15 minutes about wrestling and how excited about his next adventure with WWE was going to be. He didn't know when he was debuting. They said he was leaving in a few days to go to WWE. And I took a picture with them, and that will live on forever in my bedroom. Like, picture of me like this in between them.
That's so cool.
And
go ahead.
I met them, and it was just like that picture always lives on for me, like forever and ever and ever.
That's so cool. That's such a great story. I just met Cardona as well myself recently on at the House of Glory Darkest Hour that they just had here in Queens on December 1st. And I got to meet Cardona and chop it up with him a little bit. And very nice guy. You know, I can't say anything really mean about him. Very humble dude and stuff like that. Very generous. Gave me a pin. I got my actual hat right there, signed by Matt Cardona. It was one of his hats from his little merch table as well. And then he gave me a pin, which I got to put on that hat somewhere to kind of signify the indie god himself. He wrestled Mike Santana, who's a part of AEW, and lost, unfortunately, his belt to Mike Santana from House OG. So unfortunately, it was a loss for him, but still amazing to watch him come out and debut and wrestle and just be an absolute treat. Because I've known him since Zack Ryder, an edgehead, when he was a part of the WWE, and, seeing him win the Intercontinental Championship in a ladder match and everything was a big thing for Long Island, because the next person that we had at the time really from Long Island was like Mick Foley. There were some others that was around, but they didn't really get a good foot in the door like Cardona did or Foley did. But we still had, Foley to lean on, one of the most iconic names in professional wrestling, especially in the hardcore indie scene, besides the professional wrestling scene. So seeing him as well was really, really cool, Cardona, and very, very nice. But that's a really cool story about him and Hawkins that you have. That's pretty neat.
And Mike Whipwreck too, same day, he took a picture of Mikey and he's like that. Yeah, same show. He had that big pink hair, kind of looked like a punk rocker. It's still, he wasn't baldy like this. He had hair. He still had, Mike Whipwreck still had that hair.
That's crazy.
I just felt that the indies were just something that I have to keep close. And I didn't know what it was, but I felt like a closeness between the wrestlers and the fans, and like, sort of, because some people say that this is going off the market, but I'm not going to say anything. People think that wrestling fans are not part of. We have a line, and we're supposed to stay over the line. And certain people like me, I may be a podcaster, but I have family on that side, so I'm allowed to go on that side. I'm not in the ring. Right. I don't work for the business, but I have family, and words hurt.
Yeah. And I definitely think that, as times have changed with professional wrestling, at one point it was one of those things that you couldn't bring up or wouldn't bring up around your friends or loved ones, because it was that outcast type of society that now has morphed into this crazy entertainment of sport that we now know. I mean, we have people like Bad Bunny wrestling, and we had, of course, the Donald Trump, Vince McMahon hair off situation back at a WrestleMania, and then now the new United States champion Logan Paul being a part of this business as well. So I mean, you could really go back a little while, and you could also say David, the guy that became the WCW heavyweight champion.
Oh God, I can't think of his name. He was on.
I can't think of his last name. Yes, exactly. Dewey from Scream. He was, a legend as well. And, it's crazy how times have changed since that 80 period to where WrestleMania had people like Mr. T and Celine Dion and, legendary musical acts just performing in the show, throughout the show, besides those 4 or 5 matches that also were a part of the show as well. That was the bread and butter of what WrestleMania was. But of course, WrestleMania became this thing of entertainment. And at WrestleMania 1, we had so much entertainment that the sports aspect, at times people could say, got almost overshadowed because of all the legendary names that were at the actual venue itself or performing in that venue itself. So, but we'll continue on with the indie scene for a little bit. So like you said, you came to Deer Park, of course, and was watching one of the most ruthless matches probably at that time of your life, that you were like, holy cow, why didn't this guy die? Like, how is he still alive? What is
one guy went through the set at one point. One guy actually went to the set. Like, they did a backdrop and the guy fell right through the set. Like,
Jesus.
My God. That was the end of the show. I forgot who it was that went through the set, but they literally went through the entrance part. So that, like, how, like, what's his name? Oh, Taz did the thing on Sabu, how he went through the set. No, Bam Bam. Taz did it to Bam Bam. Like that. He went right through the set.
Oh man, that's pretty that's wild. I could tell you this story.
Tommy Dreamer live for the first time ever. I lost my ever fucking mind. I heard the Man in the Box came on, and I was like, "Oh my God, it's Tommy Dreamer!" Like,
that's funny. Yeah, I like I was saying, I was at House of Glory, and Charles Mason and Carlos Ramirez were facing each other for Charles's crown jewel title. and he did a suplex off of the side of the apron with Ramirez onto the floor. And they had a double count out because both men hit it so hard they couldn't get up. So a guy who was running the show came out and was like, "We're not ending the show this way. Nobody wants to see this. We're going to have a Falls Count Anywhere, no disqualification." And they just put the pedal to the metal and didn't let up. There was a thumbtack spot. There was a chain spot. Then they were at the bar area, and Charles climbed on the Raptors and jumped off onto the tile floor where Ramirez was. And it just was this absolute brawl for all of a situation where people were just like, holy shit, this is unbelievable. Like, hide your children. Like, there's so much blood everywhere. It became like a splash zone in sections. Like, it was just crazy how much the level of intensity turned up after he said, "We're not letting it go this way. It's going to be a Falls Count Anywhere, no disqualification." And the intensity of the match and the match itself was, I mean, 5 out of 5, 100% 5 out of 5. There was, I saw Swerve. Swerve did great with Mike Bailey, but that was probably the best match of the whole entire night, just because of the intensity that these two guys brought with them after that moment. It was insane. But with that on the brain, the indie scene, I'm looking at the amazing list of guests that you've had on. You've had Colt and Indigo. You've had people like Santana Jackson. You've also had women like Brittany Brown, Taylor One Shot, Shorty Twins, which is going to be coming soon, and so many amazing people. Lori as well. What is your mindset when you're going into these interviews with these people? How are you preparing yourself for these one-on-one interactions? How much studying goes into that scope when you're doing these interviews of these up-and-coming legends, or legends like a Brittany Brown in her heyday?
Like, I interviewed Brittany before. Me and her are kind of like friends, if you could say, on Facebook. And I heard the name Brittany Brown from a guy that owns a women's promotion in the South. Shout out to Liberty Pro Women's Wrestling, because they do some good shit. He told me about Brittany, and he's like, "You really should have Brittany Brown on your podcast. She's got a lot of stories. She's from back in the day, back in the heyday of wrestling, with women's wrestling, and you should really have her on." And he told me about her on Facebook. Me and her talk like two girls in the corner, two mean girls in the corner talking about wrestling on Facebook. And it's kind of cool for me to like talk to her. And I had her back on. And when I had her on back in the day, which was a snowstorm. She lost power. So she left the interview, and we were like, I didn't get a chance to ask her about her wrestling and training with the late great Macho Man's manager with Sherry Martel.
Mm-hmm.
She trained with Sherry Martel.
Wow.
Like that's a story in itself. She got a chance to actually tell the story about her and Sherry. And I go into these interviews and I just watch one or two clips or things on their Instagram page. And I make it this. You could take this in, and anybody watching this, any kids watching this, sorry about your language. You don't want to make the interview feel like an interview. Treat it like a fireside conversation. If you're at a Chili's or McDonald's, if you don't get
a Chili's, that's great.
Bring it
that
to
I gotta use.
Chili's. Get him a nice beer. Get him a nice steak or a nice burrito or a nice imaginary dinner. Sit down with them and make them feel like you've known them for 1 billion years. But just don't use the word buddy, because wrestlers don't like that. Treat it like, call them by their name. Make them feel like they're the most important person. Make them feel like the prettiest girl in the building. What's that? She's Bubbles is in the bathroom brushing her hair. They got the prettiest girl in the building. Like, make them feel like the most important person in the world. You book them. You want to make them feel like this interview is going to be the best interview they do the entire fucking year.
Yeah. And I think that no truer words have been said than right there, because I feel like that is a very, you know, I don't want to say basic understanding of an interview on how these things are supposed to go, but it is in many sense of the matter, because when you're having, you know, whether they're indie stars on the rise or just been in the business for quite some time and know the ins and outs, or a legend like someone like Brittany Brown, you know, you want them to feel like this isn't a podcast, this isn't an interview, this is just, like you said, a fireside chat, a one-on-one, just hanging out, waiting for the bus to come and pick you up to your next destination type of thing. And it's a light, breezy type of conversation that has a lot of awesome memories and stories to be told later down the road. So I think that is, for a lot of other people that are considering doing what we do, me, myself, and you, as a maybe career choice or a hobby or whatnot, that is something to take into consideration on how you approach these interviews, or just how you approach these things in general when meeting somebody, even in public, you know, wrestler specific. I feel like that's something that's very important to how you should conduct yourself, you know, especially. But we'll continue on with a little bit of the indie scene, because I know that's a big thing for you, and it's becoming a big thing for myself as well. Now, as I've looked at all of your stuff and watched a lot of your amazing interviews, you know, you got Skahara, is that how you pronounce her
Yeah,
name?
Skahara.
Skahara, Damsel. You also have people like the Italian Franco Constanza, which I
Yes.
think is awesome. I've heard of that name
The
prior.
last, yeah, he's called the last
Bronx.
Bronx Italian. Yes.
Yes. So now talk to me, because of course I also am Italian, I'm Sicilian to be very specific. But now, as someone who's also had family in the Brooklyn and Bronx area, my
Like my
grandfather was a
sassy
fire.
sister.
Yeah, and my grandfather was a fireman in the Bronx for many, many of a year. And now we're from Queens, Whitestone to be specific.
Oh,
Talk to
wow.
me about him. Talk to me about that, how that process went, those conversations, and any cool memories you could share with us here.
Like, it's like when you walk up to wrestlers and ask them, you want to do an interview with me really quick, just take it like this. As I said, make it like a fireside conversation. You walk up to these people, start a conversation, ask them how they're feeling, how you doing. Would you like to do a quick interview with me? First, introduce yourself. Don't just go, hi, I'm a wrestling fan and I do a podcast. All they'll hear is blah blah blah, like in South Park with the. They don't want to hear that. Say, hi, my name is Joe Panther the Third. I'm a podcaster, and tell them who you, like a little kid. You have to tell them who you are before you say get in my van. You know what I mean? Hi, I do a podcast. May I do a quick interview with you? You don't walk up with your phone like this. Hi, I'm going to do an interview right now. Hi, what do you think about this? You ask them, can I do an interview with you? And you just, if they say yes, you start the interview. And before you do the interview, ask the people on a podcast like this, or if you're at a show, is there anything we can't talk about before we do the interview? That is number one. When you get the person on a StreamYard or a Zoom or a Restream, I'm saying this for wrestlers and for podcasters. You have to ask these people what they can't talk about. Because what if you did a whole good show, like I did, a whole good show with a person, you get the whole interview done, and then you say something, and then they're like, oh, I can't, can we edit that out? That kills the whole interview. You have to talk to these people like they're regular people when you meet them. There's people that walk up to wrestlers and wonder why wrestlers don't like talking to fans sometimes.
Yeah.
Because you don't walk up to someone's table, hands behind your back with your teeth all out like this. They'll get freaked out and think you're a creep. You talk to them like they're human. They're just like us. They have blood in their veins. There's flesh on their skin. They're fucking human beings. Treat them like humans before you treat them like wrestlers. They're not animals. They're people. Talk to
Yeah.
them like people. Yeah.
I like to talk to them about things that they've done that I've been a big fan of, or moments that really got me to be a fan of them. I try to make those one-on-one interactions more about them than myself while presenting myself, and everything, or even asking or attempting to ask them for an opportunity to have them on the show in the near future or whatnot. Because for myself, I've seen a lot of others, like you said, go and approach these superstars and kind of, be an ass, honestly, and show their ass in many ways than one what how they present themselves in that little 2 minute conversation, and those no's that come so quickly because you kind of presented yourself like very ignorant, very unknowing, and not intelligent. So yeah, I feel like that's actually a really good key factor and probably one of the most important things to do, which is the presentation of yourself, because in a way you're selling the idea of a fun time if they come on that podcast or that interview with you for whatever amount of time, and getting that what you can and can't talk about out of the way before the actual show starts makes the show a lot more controllable and easier to flow with than worrying about, oh, I don't know if he's going to be able to talk about that. I don't know if she's allowed to talk about that, and asking something and then them going, well, unfortunately, I can't talk about that. Or, well, I could say this, but you'll have to edit this whole thing out. Or, that becomes a lot more of a hassle and a process than just having it already predetermined, pre-ready to go. They're just filling in those empty slots and then you're putting it out there for the public. So that's actually a very good point and very knowledgeable of yourself to give us, even like for myself, who's new and trying to be doing this a lot more frequently and stuff. So I think that's a very good take.
And one more thing about when you go to the shows, go to your shows dressed like, here we go, you're going to laugh. Go to the shows like you're going to your first date.
Yes.
Dress, most importantly,
Appropriately.
sorry about this, indie fans. Don't want to sound like I'm dropping the mic or hitting you with the hard truth. Make sure you go and shower. Dress up.
Yes.
Go to shows. Dress. If you're a podcaster, wear a nice shirt like Joe's wearing. A polo. Don't dress like Joe. But wear a polo. Wear what you're known for wearing. I don't wear the hat. I cube it up. I shave my little baldy head. I wear a dress coat, blue suit coat with the shinies on it. My black shirt. I wear my black pants. My black shoes with the red on it because it's my colors. And go, and as I like to say, go like it's your first date and make sure you get the attention. You don't want all the attention, but make the wrestlers want to know who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very key factor to how you present yourself. It's almost like dressing for the job that you want without the knowledge of dressing up for the job that you want. You're doing it in such a unconscious way that you somewhat have to be a little more conscious about that decision. And yeah, and I have sat with some very unfortunately smelly people, very great people, nice people, but a shower wouldn't hurt once in a blue moon.
I don't want to offend anybody because
yeah. No. I totally understand.
That,
No, absolutely. We're not trying to offend anybody here. Absolutely. But, we unfortunately, this community is known for people that unfortunately are in those bad predicaments or whatnot. So that unfortunately is a bad stigma with us in this community as not so fresh smelling people. But we have changed.
When they went to England. They told the fans to shower. I don't know if you heard about that.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, it was. You have to look it up. It may have to keep scrolling to when they did the AEW, the first event at Wembley. They asked the fans to shower.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, dude.
That's crazy.
Dude, that was like, ooh. Don't get involved, Joe. Your monkey's not your circus, not your monkeys, not your
Yeah.
circus.
Wow.
But yeah,
I wish I knew that. I wish I
that
knew
would have
that.
broke your podcast. That would have made your chat.
I would have had to talk about that.
Yeah,
That's
it was all over.
wild. Because the biggest thing that was with the Wembley was the fact that it's, there's 60,000 tickets sold, 65,000 tickets sold, 70,000 tickets sold. Now they've outsold WWE, and that was like the biggest thing that, of course, everybody was hearing. But that's even crazier that AEW asks the fans, "Hey, listen, please make sure you smell appropriately for this show." Is like so mind-boggling.
Would you rather be sitting next to someone that smells like Axe body spray, or would you rather smell like sitting next to a person that sound like he just walked out of a barn or hanging out with a horse and a piggy?
I don't know. I mean, I choose the latter, of course. But yeah, that's wild. That's a crazy
I heard
crazy
that and I was
statement from
like, not my
AEW.
monkey. No, ignore it. Don't mention it on your podcast. Not your
No,
monkey's
yeah, no, you
focus.
could have. Yeah,
You've
there's a lot of.
been called a hater of AEW. That'll be instantly get your tail cut off. You've almost had your panther fur shaved off a few times because how much you'd say you're not appreciative of the talent. I do like some of the wrestlers. I do like the Bucks. The Bucks have always been my favorite. I used to go to Ring of Honor before it got bought by Tony. I got a chance to go to one of the shows in where they did the original Monday Night Raw, the other room, the bigger room. And I was in the balcony for one of the Bullet Club shows. And fuck, man, the Bullet Club fans, they take over the building.
Yeah.
The Bullet Club
it's a huge community.
Oh,
yeah, it's a huge community because that community has been around for so long, and it's been so that's a really cool pen. It's a big community that's ever changing. I mean, now we have people like David Finlay being the new leader of the Bullet Club over in New Japan. So it's just like there's always new leaders, there's always new members. This business that started with people like AJ Styles and Finn Balor, and of course the Bucks, and Jay White even himself. Like, it's been this ever growing community of crazy talented superstars that are just ever growing and so vast that it's uncontrollable, but unbelievable. I'm having such a great time with you today, Joe.
Thank you. Me too. I great time.
Yeah, awesome. I'm happy.
Do you play video games by chance?
I do. I'm a big gamer. I am. I'm a big story gamer. I like my open world and story-driven games and stuff. I've been playing a lot of Call of Duty though lately because I have very little time now on my hands.
Old school me has to go back and call what everybody called it in the 90s, Call of Douchebag.
Call of Douchebags. Yeah, well, listen, there's definitely some people on there for sure. There's definitely something about that community. It's a very interesting community. They're very very negative, but no, I mean, I started gaming when I was very little. Sega Dreamcast was the first console that I ever had, and I kind of grew from there to Nintendo 64 and Sega Genesis, and then I got into the GameCube and the Xbox, and then all the PlayStations, all the Xboxes. I had a Game Boy, Color from my grandmother who used to be a gamer, which is really weird because she was a gamer only for like 2 games. I still have her old Game Boy actually with the few games that she used to play. Wow. She had, of course, Dr. Tetris, Mario Tetris. She had regular Tetris, and then she also had this Penguin game, which was really fun. I don't know why it was so much fun, but it was so much fun. I used to always, when I go over to her house, I'd always grab her Game Boy and play that. That was the only game I'd ever, like, I tried Tetris, and I was like, all right, cool, whatever. I tried Mario or Dr. Tetris or whatever, and I thought that was cool. But the Penguin game, for some reason, was like my thing. Like, I really enjoyed that one out of them all. But yeah, I mean, nowadays, unfortunately, I wish I had the time I used to have to play video games and stuff. I've been watching way too much wrestling, going to too much wrestling shows, and of course, doing this amazing podcast with awesome people like yourself and everything. So I haven't really been able to play as much. So that's why now the games that I've played or playing when I have the time is, kind of multiplayer, online, couple games here and there, and then go to bed, hopefully by a decent time so I can do my real job plus my secondary job, which is this and stuff, and do all the great stuff we do over here. But let's kind of get back into some of the other awesome things about you. But I want to hear from you a little bit. Like, what is it about wrestling besides everything we kind of talked about with every, with all the topics? What is it about wrestling that really makes you feel like this is that security blanket for you? I know you say you unfortunately have a disability. What is it that makes it easier for yourself, this beautiful art form, easier for you to have less of a more of a comfort feeling?
Well, for me, it's like I see, because I did a lot of plays in high school, the characters, the heels and the faces and the bad girls and the sweet girls and all these different characters, managers that dance with their headdresses on, like our buddy Swerve and his manager Nana, and everybody's all in this big bubble circle, and we're watching them on TV or going to the shows live and being there. And it's so cool to think that pro wrestling is like something we all love. And it just makes me think that, wow, wrestling has really moved and turned from what it used to be in the small markets and going to the big WWF shows at the Garden and Nassau Coliseum, to being able to go to an independent wrestling show, sit there, pay your $20, and then go to a table and talk to someone and be able to start a friendship or be able to work with them on a different level than you did when you were watching it on TV.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that. I feel the same way about it too. I've been to some shows as well myself. A lot more of the professional shows. My indie show experience has been very little. It's only been 2 as of now. Hopefully next year we're going to be doing some more and everything. But the shows that I've been to AEW's pay-per-view, which started it all for me, as at least in the later years. I used to go to WWE when I was younger, especially when they were in Nassau Coliseum, the few times that they were here and stuff. But AEW's Full Gear 2022 is the one that I went to end the year off last year around November and stuff. And then, of course, we went to MSG for WWE Live, a live one for their Road to the Holidays. And Road to WrestleMania, really. And then we just went to the UBS Arena here in Long Island for AEW again. And I'm going to World's End at the end of this month for AEW as well. And now House of Glory has been in the mix as well. So there's been a lot of different aspects of wrestling, like you said, that I definitely could see. And I feel like the indie scene compared to the pro wrestling scene has a lot more give than take. With pro wrestling, there's a lot more fans that are very adamant about who they like, who they don't like, why they like them, why they don't like them. And they're very adamant and sometimes not so ever forgiving for certain superstars and stuff, compared to the indie scene, which seems a lot more of a community, a real rowdy, fun-loving, hurrah, hurrah type of group of people that are just there to be there and just enjoy this beautiful art form. So would you say that that's true? Or do you feel like there's still that give and take as well in the pro wrestling scene with all the shows that you've been to throughout the years?
Wrestling community. But what's that?
I think I lost you for a minute. Yeah, you just came back now.
Like, I feel that like sometimes it is a very big community that everybody tries to support everybody, but then there's wrestlers, as I said, that think that we step over the line sometimes, thinking that we are part of the community, but we're not. But I feel that we more or less are part of the community, and they don't want to take it at thinking that we are. And there's lots of part of the community that will support you and watch your podcasts, come in and chat on your chat. But then there's some wrestling fans that think that if they did it, you're not part of it.
Yeah. I would agree with that as well. I feel like, especially nowadays with the internet being as big as it is and wrestle talk or wrestle community has been ever growing, and especially with this new generation of fans, being a lot younger and everything, everybody wants to hear their opinions a lot more, which is fine, and I wholeheartedly embrace it, whether they're right, whether they're wrong, whether they're very far out left or far out right, or just absolutely just mind blowing of an opinion, whether or not they are. I think that now you see those very intertwined, wholesome communities more in an indie scene than you would on that pro scale of entertainment because of that demographic shift that you now see. There was, of course, one part where pro wrestling was a very adult, maybe teenage based demographic that now, and John Cena said it best. I had to stop rapping because I looked into the audience one day and saw little kids, and I knew what I was doing. I can't say that to a child for them to repeat it in school and stuff. And I didn't want to. I wanted to be their role model. So I had to change it. And we had, of course, the Fruity Pebble era of John Cena, where all of his shirts changed different colors every month. And, that demographic definitely shifted and is still ever shifting now to a younger base of fans. So, I feel like now on a grander scale, pro wrestling is for the young children and the young at heart. And then there's that indie community that's for everyone and can be for everybody. And it's so open and embracing of new fans itself that it's a lot more fun to go to your local indie shows, because also you're supporting local talent. You're supporting local businesses. And I think that also is a big win for your state, for your town, when you're going out each and every week or each and every weekend or every once in a while weekend to see that up and comer that one day might show up at an AEW, a TNA, NXT, even the WWE, even one day, and be like, I remember when, Killshot, Swerve's old name from Lucha Underground, now is now Swerve Strickland from NXT, now is, Swerve Strickland on AEW. And it's just this whole ever changing and ever growing business. And it's so crazy. And I think it's so much fun to be a part of it, whatever side you may be a part of or on in general. So, but yeah, I mean, that's
for
just
me. Like for me, I interviewed Billy Starks back in the day.
Oh, I'm a big fan of hers.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of hers.
I super had her on the podcast back in the day when she first was in the indie scene. Everybody started to know her, know her name. And then we were talking for a while. She sent me a sticker. It's on my coin jar, the other podcast I'll show you. I started hearing rumbles that she may get signed, and I'm like, someone better sign that girl. She's amazing.
Yeah.
She got signed by AEW, and look at her now.
Yeah. Now
if you watch this, Billy, congratulations, girl. I'm so proud of you.
Yeah.
I can't explain how proud I am of Billy Starks.
I heard of her about a month and a half, maybe 2 months prior to her debut on AEW 0 Hour, the match that she had with Athena in one of the pay-per-views. I think it was Double or Nothing was when the time that she finally debuted on television on a big pay-per-view scale. And it was the first time I watched her actually wrestle, because I've heard of her. I've seen some stuff of hers on TikTok, Instagram, and everything like that. But I haven't really watched a whole match of Billy Starks until that day. And I was just like, wow, she is going to the moon. Like this girl here is so talented and almost so beyond what she's capable of doing. That
and her look.
It's unique. Look. Yeah, it's a unique
blue hair, like that.
Yeah, she's still
smile,
a kid.
The outfits, oh my god.
Yeah, she's absolutely amazing. Now she's going to be facing Athena again for the Ring of Honor title, the women's title, on Final Battle this coming December 15th, which of course we'll be doing a watch along for. But I'm so excited to see her do that. I hope she wins. I really do. I think it's time for her to get a brand new belt to that collection of belts that she already has and everything. It's definitely time to start pushing her to the moon, for sure and stuff. But
she's Space Jesus, so she's already in the moon. She just flies around with the cows.
yeah,
You don't know Billy
that's
from
a
back
good
in the
one.
day. She was Space Jesus.
Really? Okay, that was her old gimmick before.
Yeah, she was Space Jesus. She flies
Space
around with space
Jesus.
cow. Space Jesus, yes. She was an alien, so it's Space Jesus. She was like above us, all of us.
That's a really cool nickname. That's kind of cool gimmick. And I mean, now the hair makes sense a little more on
Blue-haired
the whole
monster,
thing.
Space Jesus, the cows. Like,
That's crazy. That's so cool.
you find
That's
any of her
such a
old
cool
stuff,
thing.
you'll be like, what? Like,
Yeah, well, that's why I'm also getting the streaming network. Excuse me, the streaming
she told
network
me a
thing
story
because
that one time she did a show, and it's on the interview that she did on YouTube. She did a match and she had to get bloody, and you know, wrestlers get the mark on top of their head. She went to school and she had a mark on her head, and the teacher thought she was getting abused. She's like, I'm a wrestler. I'm a pro wrestler.
Jesus. Oh
Yeah.
my God, I can imagine that
And she's a
conversation
high
she had to
school
have.
girl. At the
Yeah,
time, she was in high school. So like, that's insane.
yeah, and now she's graduated and she's still doing it, and I can't wait. I can't wait to see all of her success. It's going to be so exciting to see that girl rise to the top, and I really hope she becomes a big name in AEW and a big faction in just a big staple and the pillars of the women's division over in AEW. And I feel like AEW, with the way that things are going currently now with the women's division, maybe not so much currently now, but the way that it could go, I should say, in the future for the women's division, she has a lot of talent to work with and to learn from. So she would be in really good hands, like she is right now with Ring of Honor's talented ladies, especially with Athena. So I think she's in good hands now, but she's going to be even in better hands when she decides to come over to AEW full time.
There's some other names that AEW never really like brought on, and I'm shocked. Like Kylon King, that girl. I actually had her on Dudes of Ring Songs back in the day, and it was before she got signed by Impact. And she's part of Impact. King, if you're watching this, congratulations. I'm so proud of you. Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
No, absolutely.
oh.
Sorry, the dogs. The dogs are barking. They're
Okay, no, they smell a cat. Sorry, Panther.
no, they're going outside. So I try to do this very quietly, but sometimes it's a little hard with the
No,
dog.
they smell the panther they're trying to attack. Sorry.
Yeah, you go. They're smelling the panther, so that means it's time to attack. Exactly. But I want to ask you just a couple quick questions before I let you go for the night.
Okay.
Favorite interview you have done in 2023, male or female? You could actually pick one of each if you like. And one that we'll start with that. What's one of your favorite male and favorite female that you've done so far?
Favorite male would have to be, oh my gosh, there's been so many.
Yes, you have a lot, and I've watched a good amount of them. So
Yes.
I could list
They
a
all
couple
need
if you
love.
like.
They all need love.
They
Oh my
always
gosh,
need
it
love.
hasn't even aired yet. Is Santana Jackson.
Okay.
That one, because he's the king of wrestling pop. He. That's all I'm gonna say is he. The favorite female would be a return, but it was on Twins with my sister, Roddy Piper's daughter, Teal Piper. And
Wow.
Deimos. Yes, those are other ones you need to contact. Teal Piper and Deimos.
Yeah, I mean, if you can, we'll talk off air about contact information with that, because I would love to pick Teal's brain, especially with her father's amazing lineage
Such a
and
sweet
stuff.
girl, such a sweet woman.
I hear.
Deimos and Teal. My story. Can I quickly tell you after? I'll tell you after the meeting Teal and Deimos for the first time. I was like, "Uh-oh, Rojo, don't look. Just look straight and keep walking." I'll tell you after. It was funny. It's not a bad thing, but it's funny how I met them. But your next question.
I'll tell you a very funny story now, and I think it's one of my favorite stories I was ever told. I work for an energy drink company. I'm not allowed to say who, but I work for an energy drink company, and I work with a whole bunch of other vendors like Pepsi and Coca-Cola. Like I always, when I go to these stores to service the stores, I get to see all the other vendors, and I'm friends with all the other vendors. One of the vendors used to know and play ball with Mick Foley
Oh wow.
way back in the day. But the story doesn't get crazier just yet. When his daughter finally got a car and needed to buy a car, she bought the car Mick Foley used to travel in for a lot of the New York shows and Connecticut shows that he would work for. And I found that story to be so crazy because she called her dad. She goes, "Dad, you won't believe what car I just bought." And he was like, "What kind?" And she told him or whatever. And then she goes, "But that's not the best part of it. The best part of it is Mick Foley drove the car. Mick Foley used to drive this car to go to Madison Square Garden and go to upstate New York, go to Boston and all these other places to wrestle for Vince and stuff." And it was just it's such a crazy story itself that I was just like, "Whoa, that's so crazy. That's such a great story." But you'll definitely have to tell me about Teal. So now, your woman one would you say is your favorite one?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, favorite venue for the indie shows you have been to that you cannot stop going to no matter who's there.
Ooh, good one. Since I've been going this year to PPW in Slatington, Pennsylvania, which is a great promotion, PPW. They always bring down the house, Pennsylvania Pro Wrestling at PPW. They do a show in a place in Slatington, PA. It's like a sports expo center. I think I told you about this on Instagram. It's half like a sports venue room, big room, and the other side is like a big consignment shop.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
cool venue. I would say House of Glory because that's the only one I've been to. But okay. And then the last question I would have to say, what is the most craziest story you have heard from either a male or female? And if you want, you could pick either that
Ooh.
they have had in their career that absolutely made you go, that's something that I don't know if there's another story that could top that.
Oh yes, I got you. You're right. It froze. Like
No, good.
I
I'm good.
got
I'm
the
good.
story was when I interviewed Gem Jules. She did a thing. We were talking, and she was wrestling a wrestler, and the wrestler stapled her vagina on the ring. I thought it was this year. It was
That's
Randy West.
insane.
Randy West was wrestling her in a death match, and she stapled on the ring. She got her off. I asked both sides of the story from Randy West and from her, from Gem Jules Malone, just from Canada. I was like, I got to have Randy on, and I had Randy on, and I was just like blown away. And I was like, wow, no, this is fucking crazy.
That's
Yeah.
insane. That's an absolutely crazy story. I think the craziest story I've ever seen, or at least watched, because it wasn't really a story, it was a match. The guy in TNA, his name is PDQ or QPC, something like that. He plays this like Frankenstein character. The match was a hardcore.
Yeah. He was in AEW.
Stapled his lips together with a staple gun and then had to pull the staples out of his mouth. And they had an angle zoomed in on him, and you just watched it. I was like, what in God's name is going on here? That was the most craziest since Mick Foley's tooth in his nose that I've ever seen in my existence.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I was just shocked.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think that it's insane that these people put their life on the line for our entertainment.
Yeah, no, it's It's the fact of the matter that they do absolutely the most craziest stunts in the world to just get this art form to the masses, and the lengths they're willing to go is absolutely insane. It's absolutely insane. It
Hmm.
really is. I'm absolutely flawed by the extent of how they are willing to really put themselves in the most craziest of harm's way in any way, shape, and form. You know, like
It's insane.
it's insane. New Jack being one of the ones that literally would try to kill you in the match. Another one of those death defiers that comes to mind itself, and it's just wild. It's absolutely wild. But that is going to do it for us here. I am so happy we got to do this show together. This was an amazing show. I want you to now talk about things that are coming up on your podcast. Anybody in particular, things that you want to plug? The floor is yours. Of course, let them know who you are. All your links can be found down below, but let the people know who the hell you are and where you can find you.
I am Joe Panther the Third, and you could find me hanging out in my favorite place in the whole wide world, my NBC, the Joe Panther. I'm gonna do a Howard Finkel voice. You could find me hanging out in the Jose Quinones Memorial Studios on the Joe Panther Variety Show on YouTube and Spotify. And you could also follow me on Instagram under Joe Panther the Third. You could follow me under, because I'm the mod, under Dudes at Ringside Podcast. You could also follow me under the Twins at Ringside Podcast. You could follow me also. Say hi to Baby Slimer. Come slay me. You can find me under Ghost Head Nerd Talk Podcast with me and Rain. Also find me doing my podcast with my friend, which is a commentator with Sabrina, Subbies, as I call her, hanging out, talking to the local talent. And it's just so much stuff happening this year for me. Since the end of March, I just have been riding this wave of the rebranding of me and what I do. I have the pin on my jacket. I can't run and grab it because it's so far away. Just kidding, my closet's right there. But just fans, before I go, before our friend here ends the show, just take my advice. Support the indies. Go out, go to a show. I'm not saying don't go on pro wrestling tees, but find a way to buy a wrestler's stuff. It will change their day. And if you have a friend that likes wrestling, only goes to WWE or only goes to AEW, only watches the big shows, bring them to an independent wrestling show. It may change their perspective of what they think of the indie scene, because independent wrestling is where it started. It didn't start on the big stage in WWE. It didn't start on the big stage at AEW. It started in the gyms. It started in the small bars. Indies is the home of where you could find anything from deathmatch to catch as catch can, grapple wrestling, like midget wrestling, women's wrestling. Everything started in the indies. I'm going to say hashtag support the indie scene. I'm Joe Panther III, and I am loving this. Thank you.
Yeah, dude, that was an amazing outro. Thank you so much for all of that awesome information. Thank you so much for sharing your beautiful family's lineage with all of us here at the Last Week of Wrestling podcast, and all the fans that are going to be listening on Spotify or here back again over on YouTube. I'm so happy we got to do this together. I'm going to have you just stick around after the show ends just to chop it up with you just a tad bit more and everything. But of course, everybody, that has been the Last Week Variety Show with Joey P. the Third, none other than the coolest cat in town and Mr. International himself. I'm so happy to have you, buddy. We definitely need to be doing this again very soon.
To Ringside next year for podcast month, right?
Absolutely. Let me know. Give me the date and I am on it. Give me the date and I am on it. Absolutely. Yes. Because I would love to be a guest on your show 100%. but you have definitely brightened up my day. You're an amazing person. You deserve all the accolades that you have gotten this year, and so many more are on your horizon. I see it already for you. You're an amazing person, all in all, and this has definitely been a really great show. I'm very happy we got to do this. But of course, everybody, we are going to be doing something just a tad bit special come tomorrow, because tomorrow we are going back to our Monday Night Raw watch-alongs right here on the Last Week in Wrestling podcast, as well as Friday Night SmackDown watch-alongs are going to be starting as well this coming Friday. Of course, we still do our AEW stuff every Wednesday and Saturday, and podcast between every Thursday and Sunday. Busy schedule for a busy week. Each and every week, we always got something going on. But of course, besides this awesome guest, we have a couple other ones that I'm going to share with you guys now that are going to be coming on later this month. None other than Roman Wrestling, a good friend of mine over on TikTok. Him and I are going to be chopping it up about WWE and AEW come December 10th. That's what it says on the calendar, so that's what I'm going to go with. December 10th. Of course, Isaiah Moore, AEW Dark and Dark Elevations superstar, will be the first real wrestler that I will be having on the actual show itself to talk about on the 11th. I'm very excited for that. And so many more great things happening this month and, of course, come next year. And I guarantee you, you're going to be seeing Joey Panther not once, maybe not even twice, probably a few times throughout next year. We're going to try to get him on a little bit more frequently as a frequent flyer here at the Last Week of Wrestling podcast. Make sure you go ahead and blow up his channel over on YouTube, over on Instagram, and over on Spotify. We really appreciate all that love. And of course, make sure you hit us with that follow and love and support too over on Spotify. For all you audio listeners out there, make sure you give us all the best stars in the world, which is 5 out of 5. So keep on hitting us with those 5 out of 5 stars on both of our channels, so that way we can keep going and grinding. And Joey P, that's it. Thank you so much, buddy. And we shall see each other very soon. And that's it for us here on Last Week. I'll see you guys tomorrow from Monday Night Raw Watch Along. Good night.